What if the person who fixed machines was also the one quietly healing broken souls? She wasn't a doctor, she didn't wear a white coat, no stethoscope, no clipboard, just a tool belt, and silence. In the dim corridors of a psychiatric hospital, there worked a woman in her 40s, hands calloused, eyes observant. She tightened bolts, replaced wires, and in between the hum of fluorescent lights, she wrote. At first, it was just scribbles about what was broken, a loose panel, a flickering lamp, but slowly, her notes became something else. She wrote about what she saw, what she felt, not about machines, but about people, their silence, their sadness, their strength. And without realizing it, she wasn't just fixing things anymore, she was mending hearts, starting with her own, one quiet story at a time. Her name was Mara, 46 years old, divorced, no kids, no grand story, no big spotlight, just a woman in overalls, with a quiet soul and a steady hand. She worked the maintenance shift at Westbridge Psychiatric Hospital, not in psychiatry, not in therapy, just machines, cables, fuses, mental noise, silence. Each morning Mara came in early, before the clatter of breakfast trays, before the soft beeps of heart monitors and whispered group sessions. She arrived when the building still slept, coffee in one hand, toolbox in the other. She walked those long, sterile halls like someone who'd done it for years, not rushing, not dragging, just moving with purpose. She checked her list: EKGs, oxygen machines, bed lifts, bathroom fans, fix, replace, leave, repeat. It was a rhythm, safe, predictable. But Mara noticed things. She noticed how room 217 always had soft jazz drifting out, as if the room itself needed soothing. Inside was a man who hadn't spoken in months, not a word, but he tapped his fingers in time with the music, a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat trying to remember it was alive. She noticed room 204, Emily's room, the girl with paint always under her nails. Emily covered her walls with flowers, roses, daisies, wildflowers with names no one else seemed to know. But in the corner, just one corner, there was always a blank space, always avoided, as if some memories were too sharp for color. Mara never asked questions, she didn't intrude, but she listened, not with her ears, with her eyes. She saw the tremors, the patterns, the stories tucked into small gestures. One night, after a long shift, Mara sat at her tiny kitchen table, under the hum of a tired light bulb, and opened a fresh notebook. She stared at the first blank page for a long while. Then she wrote, "Room 311, patient hums in his sleep. Sounds like a lullaby. It's the same every night. Comforting, like someone remembering being loved." The next day, after another shift, Emily painted the blank corner today. It was a dark blue ocean. She cried afterward. "I wanted to say something, but I didn't." That notebook became her ritual. At first, it was just a place to record the little things, but slowly, it became more. Each entry wasn't just about them, it was about her too, because Mara had been numb for a long time. After the divorce, after her mother passed in a quiet hospice bed, after the years that slipped by in a blur of fluorescent lights and empty rooms, she stopped feeling. Silence became her comfort, her shield. But somehow, through these entries, she began to thaw, like when she watched Theo, once a gifted violinist, now diagnosed with schizophrenia, holding a stick like a bow and swaying gently to music only he could hear. She wrote, "He plays without strings, but I swear I heard music." And maybe she did. Maybe the soul hears what the ears cannot. One morning, Mara passed a nurse in the hallway. The nurse paused and smiled. "You're always so quiet," she said, almost apologetically. "But the patients, they seem calmer when you're around." Mara only nodded. She never quite knew what to say, but maybe she didn't have to. Another morning, she found something waiting in the break room. A small envelope, white and creased, with no name, just 5 words, scrawled in careful handwriting. "You see us. Thank you." She never found out who left it. She didn't ask, but something inside her cracked. not in a painful way, in a relieving way, like morning light breaking through thick clouds. That night, her journal entry was longer, and this time, it wasn't about a patient, it was about her. I used to think silence meant emptiness, but here, it feels full of stories, pain, hope, and healing. Maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. She started to write more. Not just observations but reflections. She wrote about her mother, about the way she used to hum while folding towels. She wrote about the morning she left her marriage and didn't look back, only forward, into nothingness. She wrote about how the machines at Westbridge sometimes reminded her of people, a faulty wire, a loose bolt, a system that looks fine on the surface but shuts down under pressure. And she wrote about the patients not as cases, but as humans, raw, wounded, resilient, like Nathan, who lined up sugar packets on his tray every day, alphabetized by brand, until the day Mara sat beside him and asked which one was the sweetest. He looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled for the first time. She wrote, "There's something sacred about being seen." As the weeks passed, Mara began to change. She spoke a little more, laughed once in the elevator, brought an extra muffin for the security guard on night duty. Undramatic, just warmer. One day, she noticed the man in room 217 had stopped tapping to the jazz. She peeked in. He was humming, just faintly, barely audible, but there it was, a voice returning. She didn't write that one down. She just smiled and walked on. Months later, she would fill that first notebook, then another, and another. She never showed them to anyone, didn't post quotes online, didn't publish a memoir, but in those pages, she found herself again. Not all at once, not like a lightning strike, but gently, patiently, the way flowers open under dawn. Mara was never trained to heal, but somehow, she did, with hands that fix machines, and a heart that stitched stories. And in the quiet hum of that hospital, where so many arrived feeling lost, there was one woman silent and seen, who paid attention, who bore witness, who cared. Not with words, but with presence, and sometimes, that's more than enough. Mara still works at Westbridge, still shows up early, still carries her old, worn-out toolbox, and that little notebook, now filled cover to cover with quiet moments and silent truths. She still fixes what's broken, not just the machines, but something more subtle, a flickering hallway light, a forgotten radio, a patient's tired glance that softens when she walks by. No one calls her a healer, no one hands her awards or writes her name on plaques, but healing doesn't always come with the title. It doesn't need degrees or ceremonies. Sometimes, healing looks like showing up, noticing, caring in the small, consistent ways most people miss. Mara never asked to be seen. She never asked for thanks. What she found was something quieter, and maybe more lasting: peace. So the next time you pass someone, quiet someone in the background, remember this. Sometimes the loudest healers are the ones who never say a word.